As the new school year begins, co-parenting can present its own challenges, especially when it comes to ensuring your child's safety and well-being.
If you're worried about your former spouse's alcohol use during their parenting time, the SoberLink alcohol testing system can help. It's the only tool that offers you instant peace of mind, no matter where they are.
All right, Seth. Now, I know you are a fan of SoberLink. What do you get with SoberLink, and why is it important to you?
It's so important, Pete. Listen, you have a former spouse or soon-to-be former spouse that struggles with alcoholism and struggles with alcohol. You need SoberLink for the following reasons, because this is what you get. You can get scheduled testing times. You can get built-in facial recognition to confirm it's your co-parent that's being tested. It has a tamper sensor to catch anybody attempting to beat the system. And you get immediate results sent directly to your phone. That way, you can ensure that your kids are safe with the sober parent.
Whether it's school drop-offs or extracurricular activities or weekend visits, let your kids focus on connecting with their other parent in a safe and supportive environment. Head over to www.soberlink.com/toaster to learn more and save $50 on your device today. Thank you to SoberLink for sponsoring The Toaster. Welcome to How to Split a Toaster, a divorce podcast about saving your relationships from True Story FM. Today, we continue the nuts and bolts of your divorce by talking about your responsibility and that of your toaster.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Seth Nelson. As always, I'm here with my good friend, Pete Wright. Today, we're talking about you. Now, most people are going to say, that's great, but you might not like it. Here's why. We're going to talk about your actions. In a divorce, everybody wants to talk about all the bad stuff that their spouse or former spouse is doing, if it's a post-judgment case. But we want to talk about you in ways and things that you can do and not do to make your divorce easier and less expensive and a little more streamlined.
Seth, I'm excited about this. I like what we're doing this season, the nuts and bolts of your divorce case. This is going to be a great season. And today we're starting with, I don't know, who's to blame in what screws up your case and how do you know it's you?
A little bit. Yeah. So remember, when you're going through a divorce, it's a very, very difficult time. It takes up a lot of space in your head. It literally can consume you. And that's not uncommon. And when people are consumed and their personality traits are heightened and things are stressful, they don't always make the best decisions. And the reason they don't make the best decisions is they're very reactive as opposed to responding. And I think the difference between reaction and response is reaction is without thought and a response is afterthought. So I always encourage people, and the things we're going to talk about today, we need to be thoughtful. We need to be intentional. You have agency. You have power over everything I'm going to talk about today is all within your control. And in a divorce, it feels like you don't have control. But these are the things that you can control that will make your life easier and make your divorce less stressful, less phone calls to lawyers, which is less expense and doesn't slow down the process.
You built out a little curriculum for us today. We're going to walk through each of these items one by one. Don't forget, if you're listening to this live, you can ask us questions on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. They're all streaming live, whatever your platform of choice is, and we may just answer them on the show. For now, let's start with what you're thinking about, Seth. Standing orders. What are standing orders? How do they affect behavior of divorcing parties?
This is our favorite tagline, check your local jurisdiction. But very frequently across the country, when a divorce is filed, the court, the judge, enters an order. And it's called a standing order. It is always in place during the pendency of your case. And what that order does is it tells the parties, we haven't looked at your case. We don't know any facts about your case, but this is how you should be behaving. And if you're not going to behave in what this order is telling you and how to behave, there could be consequences, and some of them could be severe consequences.
Okay, so give me an example. What kind of constraints are they putting on behavior in a template standing order?
The financial makeup and what typically happens, which we call keep everything status quo, should be the same. So, someone files for divorce. What happens frequently is one party will immediately start running up a credit card bill. Well, if that's not your typical spending, you shouldn't be doing that. So when someone starts running up a credit card bill, I call it, they pulled that rope. They're like, okay, here we go. We're going to start playing this tug of war. What does the other person do? Cuts off the credit card. Now, one party swipes the card and it doesn't go through, and they're mad. Well, then they call their lawyer. Start running the legal fees.
Yeah, we're escalating now.
That lawyer calls the other lawyer. More legal fees. That lawyer has to call their client and ask client, did you turn off the credit card? Did you limit it? Did you do this? Did you did you just cancel it? Yes. Let's assume they did it. Why? Well, $20,000 run up on the bill. And then the question from me, what's the typical spending on that card? $2,000. That first client did not maintain the status quo. They overshot it by $18,000, which now causes that credit card to be
cut off. Yeah.
Right. So how do you handle that?
Yeah. What are the implications of that?
If I'm advising a client, I'm telling them, leave the credit card where it normally is and just put the limit to what the normal spending was.
So you mean like literally call the credit card company and say, I need you to adjust the limit.
That's right. We typically spend on this card $4,000. Put the limit at $4,000. Okay. And if they want to go argue about that in court, I'm happy to do that because I'm going to say, yeah, judge, it went from 2 to 18, right? Or to 20.
Right after the divorce was.
Right after or right before, which was not what was typically happening the year before. So what my client did is he put a limit on that card that we can show you over the last 12 months was the typical spending on that card. We're maintaining the status quo. Okay.
Okay.
Another option is, which isn't necessarily the best option, you got to get the lawyers to try to work this out. But I'm talking about actions that you can do on your own with trying to save some fees. They spend $18,000. They spend $20,000. They typically spend $2,000. Pay $2,000 down.
And then leave the rest for...
Leave the rest. And if it's after the date of filing in Florida, check your local jurisdiction. Any card that gets run is that person's debt that they have to pay for. Now, you might have a support obligation like, oh, it was a typical marital expense, so you both should pay. We can work all that out. And I know interest is ticking, but I assure you the interest on these credit cards, as outrageous as they can be, is less than lawyer fees.
That's a really great thing to remember because we already know how frustrating credit card debt can be. It is hard and counterinstinctual for a lot of people to say, we're just going to let it go.
Right. I'm just going to ruin my credit. Nope. Pay your bill. But these are just things you can do at the very front end. And one, don't cut off the card. But if this is happening, look at the spending. You got to be honest. You can't just make these numbers up. Okay. By the time this is happening, you're going to be talking to your lawyer. So your lawyer is going to advise you on what to do and check with them. But I'm just saying at the very front end, don't cut off people's access to credit. Don't reset limits. Don't do anything. Leave it all the same. If they start playing games, then we need to respond. But we are going to respond by saying, let's go look at what we've done the last 12 months. I'm going to write a letter to the other lawyer saying your client's overspent by this much. He's limited at this. And I'm going to put it all out there on paper. Because then, fast forward, when you go to court and they put you on the stand and they say, why did you drop the credit to $4,000? Yes. Why? Objection, Your Honor, attorney-client privilege, which tells everybody in the courtroom, I'm the guy, the lawyer, told him to do it.
Okay. That you instructed him to do this adjustment.
Right. And then they said, answer the question, but do not reveal attorney-client privilege. I can't answer the question. Okay. But you see how now we've done it by being responsible and responsive. And that's a long way to get to court. This doesn't happen overnight, but it creates conflict along the way. So one thing you do, don't run up credit cards. Keep the status quo on spending. Don't get all upset if all of a sudden there's a $3,000 bill that gets run and you realize, you know what? That was the insurance. We usually run that bill every year, but you saw $3,000 and you freaked out. You've got to respond. You've got to think about this stuff. Don't be reactive. Okay, that's some basic stuff on status quo on credit cards. Let's talk about other financials. Pay the car payments. Pay the health insurance. Pay your car insurance. Keep it status quo.
You say status quo with a lot of weight and gravitas, right? It sounds very important. What happens when a non-status quo event occurs? Somebody has to have surgery. Somebody, that you have to buy a car because you're in an accident, right? How easy is it to mitigate those kinds of extreme events that happen during the course of the divorce?
Great question. So something that out of the ordinary comes up, then you're going to deal with that appropriately by calling your lawyer and saying, look, my spouse has to have surgery or I have to have surgery. It's not an elective surgery. The doctor's saying I have to have it. Okay. That surgery is going to take place after the date of filing. We're talking about this is all after the date of filing. So in Florida, that's going to be a debt that's responsible for you. And we're going to put that into the mix. Okay. But go have your surgery. Make sure the insurance is paid up. But the problem comes in when someone canceled the insurance and now you have to have surgery.
Yeah. Right.
And now it's not covered. And now if my client was the one that has to have the surgery and the other spouse let their insurance lapse without letting us know, now I'm going to go argue that the out-of-pocket is all on them.
Because they're the ones who essentially sabotaged
the insurance.
Okay.
Right. Car, you need a new car. That's fine. But let's be very clear. If you're trading in a car, how much was it? Produce the documents. You want to be transparent with the other side. Everybody in divorce wants to keep things in. Give them the documents. Here's where it is. We're not hiding anything. We're tracing the money. Be transparent. Get that stuff to your lawyer. Get it over to the other side. People that don't have the information, assume the worst. Give them the information.
Question coming in. Even if you plan a vacation from work is coming up and you plan a trip overseas, is that considered extravagant if it's a vacation?
Oh, live question coming in. Here we go. So you're getting a divorce. I'm understanding the question. I'm going to repeat it back to make sure I understand. You already have a vacation planned and you're going to go on that vacation. That's okay if that's what you've typically done. If it was already planned, that's okay. We can deal with that on the back end, but we're going to be transparent with the other side. As you're aware, this trip was planned. I'm still going to go on this trip. You need to understand that by going on that trip, you might be ultimately responsible for paying for it.
Right.
And as long as you're okay with that, then that's okay. If you're like, ooh, I only want them to pay for it. Well, they might not. The court might not require them to do that. So then we have to adjust accordingly. And whether it's extravagant or not depends on the trip and depends on your standard of living and your typical travel. So I try not to answer, without the details.
That's fair. Where do you want to go from these financial issues? You want to move on to communication?
Well, I'm going to go still with standing orders with kids.
Okay.
So a lot of this applies whether you have kids or not, but when it's a kid issue, I'm going to point it out. Maintain the status quo again. Let's make sure that kids are getting picked up, that kids are going to their extracurriculars. We all know that the child rearing will change. We all fall into our habits when we're married. Who's picking up the kids, who's not, who's game to practice, who's working late. We know some of that's going to change. Don't come in and try to be dad of the year all of a sudden and just take over. Your kids are going to need to transition to some of these different dynamics and responsibility. but don't put your kids in the middle. Don't communicate with the other co-parent through your children. Don't have conversations about the divorce with your kids. Don't text them about it. Don't get them involved in any way other than to say, both parents love you. We're going to do our best to work it out, to do what's best for you. And we want you to be a kid.
Question. You said something that sticks out to me. Don't text your kids about, I presume what you're talking about are any of the divorce issues. At what point is it okay to have a standing text communication with your kid that doesn't have the other parent on it? Is that ever okay during the divorce?
Yeah, it depends on the age of the kid. I don't think every single communication is required to have both parents on it. Okay. I think that you need to be very careful with text, because texting a lot is reactive. You get one in, boom, you hit it. There's not a lot of thought going into that. And we all know that it's going fast because we all spell it wrong. Right? So slow down, respond. Okay. And at some levels, I would actually be a little concerned if you had a joint text with both parents and the kid, because that's right for you to respond to what the parent's saying and the kid's reading it.
Yes.
So just be very, very cautious on that.
Okay. Where do we want to go from here? Anything else on kids, or do you want to talk about our favorite communication strategies?
Right there, Pete, because that is going to be 90% of the ballgame, is how you communicate. There's a reason you're getting a divorce, no matter what that is. That needs to be put aside, and you need to change the way you communicate with your soon-to-be former spouse. Every single communication you send is literally potential evidence to be used against you in a court of law. Judges hate text messages. Judges hate poor communication. And it is a window into your soul. And some of them are like, I'm tired of hearing it. Like they're numb to it. But what happens is they're numb to it, and then they read new communication that even goes beyond their numbness.
Yeah. Triggering.
And then they're like, this is the worst I've ever seen. And you will get hammered in court on that. And it was all preventable because you're the one that did it. So, couple things on communication.
Burn your phone.
There we go.
I just want to make sure that's on the list. I just want to make sure the option of just burning your phone is on the list.
I actually am not so violent against the phone. I just say break your thumbs, because then you can't text. Okay.
Armed. That's good.
Other than that, one, please go buy the book Biff by Bill Eddy, and we'll have it in the show notes.
We sure will. Bill Eddy is a good friend. We have the It's All Your Fault podcast on this very same network on True Story FM. You can listen to Bill all the time. He's wonderful.
His way to discuss communication is just wonderful. So buy the book, read it, implement it.
Now, we got to tell people, what does Biff mean?
Brief, informative, friendly, and firm. As you know, adjectives. An adjective is going to describe stuff. It's what writers use. It's what people use in the movies. Our questioner says, can I go on an extravagant trip? Okay. These are all wonderful words and uses in the English language, not when you're going through a divorce. We don't want adjectives. We don't want descriptive. You're not writing a novel. You're communicating with someone who you have a very difficult time communicating with. So we're going to be brief. We're going to be informative. We're going to be friendly, and we're going to be firm. So words that should be in your communications. Please. Thank you.
So far, so good. I can track with that.
Okay. So you get some scathing text about how you're not agreeing to put a child in an extracurricular activity, and they're going to go on, and they're going to blame you, and you. So you're going to respond to that by saying, thank you for your message. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Then you're going to say, I don't believe that soccer with this team on these dates work best, period, because, and now you're being informative, right? They also have gymnastics later that day. This, the grades are struggling. I believe it's too much. Okay. So you've been brief, you've been informative. You never say anything about the other parent. Okay. Then you're firm. And it's just your beliefs, right? So you've been brief, informative, and now you're going to be friendly and firm. And you're going to say, I'm sorry that we can't work this out at this time, and I'm not in agreement. If you have any other thoughts regarding it or how to solve these other issues, please let me know.
Tell me in your experience how people who are in a contentious divorce deal with the term, the I believe, because it feels like that can be triggering too, and sort of open a door for someone to say, I don't care what you believe. I care about the fact that I set up soccer and they need to be at soccer.
Yeah. So I'm not concerned how the other person is responding to this. In a way of saying I believe is you're just giving, this is my perception. This is what I believe is right. By saying I believe in my mind, you're open to other interpretations. Someone else can have another belief. Okay. I'm not poking them, right? But it just softens it for me. And there's other ways to do it. But what I don't like is it's not in the child's best interest, because then you just sound like you're arguing in court, right? She seems to be struggling. The grades appear to be lower. I find her to be tired, right? So you can use these things that kind of like, not
observational, like try to make it like, this is what I'm seeing.
That's right. You are, what I always like to say is, and for the sports fans out there, you have the play-by-play announcer that only says what they see. Then you have the color commentary guy that puts it into perspective. No color commentary. No color commentary. It's all play-by-play. You are just looking at the field. You're telling them what you see, and you're done.
Okay. All right. I get that.
Bill Eddy is great.
Now we're going to move to Love Island.
Okay. Here we go.
So we're talking about dating during divorce. I know. Hard left turn to Love Island. What are let's talk about the potential legal and emotional consequences of dating during your divorce.
First off, if you're looking for a long-term relationship that you want to be sound, it's not the good time to start that relationship. Right. Talk to a therapist about it.
Right. There are better times.
When you bring in a third party into your divorce, which is what you're doing if you start dating.
Very different than bringing a third party into your marriage, if you know what I mean, Wink.
That's true, which would frequently lead to the divorce.
Yes, indeed.
You are asking for trouble. One, people tell me, I don't understand why this is a problem. He's already dating someone. He had an affair. They've moved in together. What does it matter if I go out on a date or if I'm out on the dating website or, apps? Okay. The problem is people are not rational. And in their mind, yeah, they're okay to go out and they're okay to move in, but they don't want you to be happy. And what do you mean you're now dating somebody? They feel like they've lost some control on that. And I'm saying this even if you don't have kids, but if you have kids, now, who's this person coming around my kids?
Yeah, right. Suddenly that's a new thing to argue about.
Exactly, which wasn't there before. So in my perfect world, as your lawyer, you wouldn't date during your divorce. I also understand that doesn't always occur.
Lives are messy.
If you are going to date, you need to understand the following things. That person you're dating could be a potential witness in your case, and we're going to talk about talking to friends and family. Where you go matters. So if all of a sudden you start dating someone and then you're with your kids and you're getting text messages and you're texting back, all of that is discoverable and can come into court. And they're going to say, well, why is that discoverable? Well, you're fighting for 50-50. And here you are, and you're supposed to be with your kids that you want the time so badly. But we've got an hour of text messaging back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
When you were with your kids.
You're not spending time with your kids. So you need to be careful about how you communicate. You get that text message and you respond, thanks for the text. I'm with my kids. I will call you after they are asleep in bed. Right? So you've got to be careful. But really, the way the soon-to-be ex-spouse, former spouse responds, you never know. And this also happens after people are divorced. They're getting along great in their relationship. They're co-parenting great. Then someone starts dating someone or someone gets remarried and it goes south quick.
So discoverable, like is cell phone like metadata discoverable? We hear so much about metadata. So you're going to see who I called and how long I was on the phone, in addition to when, that all of that kind of stuff, like actual phone.
You can you might have to fight for it, but I have gone to a phone and sent it to an expert who's downloaded everything, especially text messages to and from kids, to and from other parties. That
I imagine is easier. It was do you find yourself in a position to like, okay, I'm going to call AT&T Wireless and I'm going to get them to send me your call records.
It's called the power of a subpoena. And the answer is yes.
Okay. That's good to know. Keep that in your quiver.
Yeah. Be careful what you do on your phone.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. This dovetails into talking to friends and family.
Yes.
You need to have support. We want you to have support during difficult times. Be careful what you say. I would much prefer you go pay a therapist and talk to them and deal with that for that hour once a week or twice a week or once every other week, whatever you need to do. Because when you're talking to your friends and you're talking to your family, everything you say can be used against you in court. And you're making all of those friends witnesses.
Right. Because you're in court and you suddenly see they call your next witness and it's your best friend.
Yeah, that's
horrifying. Why would you want to put them in that position?
You're going to find out before, because what I've done is I take depositions and one of my questions is, who have you talked to about this divorce? And they give me this long list. And now I can go depose every single one of them. What did they say? What did they do? And then, who did you talk to about preparing for this deposition, Mr. Witness? And then they say, oh, well, I talked to their lawyer. Well, what did their lawyer tell you? And it gets a little vague in this, but you can start digging in. Like, did you talk about the divorce? No. Did complain about the spouse? No. Yes. What did they say? Did they say anything good? Did they tell you? Like, why are you going to put your friends through this? So be careful. Be careful. Therapist, it's a protected communication. And let me tell you, your friends are great, but sometimes they get tired of hearing about this anyway.
Use your friends to talk about stuff to get your mind off your divorce.
That's right. That's right. And they say, how's the divorce going? You can say, look, it's really difficult. My lawyer told me I don't really want to talk to you because I don't want to make you a witness. And hopefully we're going to get through it, but it's stressful. Can we talk about something else, please?
Yeah, right.
Your friends will respect it.
Okay. Just in terms of friends and people who are also on your divorce team, can you just remind us whose communication is protected versus unprotected?
I'm just going to tell you who's protected. If you're talking to your doctor, that's protected. If you're talking to your therapist, that's protected. If you're talking to your lawyer or someone in your lawyer's office, that's protected.
Full stop.
Full stop. With the exception. See how I did that, Pete?
Of course, that was good.
Lawyer is full stop. There's always exceptions to the rules. We won't get into the minor ones on lawyers. Like if you're going to commit a crime, we have to let you know and stuff like that. But your medical records, if mental health is an issue, those might come out. So, but they're just harder. There's different levels.
Okay.
So, but be very, very careful on who you're talking to that does not have these protections. Super, super important.
All right. Do we need to talk more about your therapist?
Get one. That's why it's back on the list. I'm serious. Right. It sounds so silly. Get one. It will save you money.
I mean, is there anything specific one should consider when looking for a divorce therapist? What are the questions that you as an attorney would say, go ask this person these questions? They're going to be a good partner for you.
I would tell you, if you're going through a divorce and you're getting a therapist, your number one goal isn't to solve all of your problems and figure out why you got where you are. Your goal is, I am coming to you to help me emotionally get through this difficult time called a divorce. Help me, give me the skill set on how I can respond better, how I can compartmentalize what's going on in my life. So when I'm with my kids and my ex texts me, it doesn't set me off. It doesn't trigger me. What skills can you give me to regulate my emotions, to focus on what I need to focus on when I need to focus on it? That's why you should be going to a therapist.
That is so good. I love the way you're thinking about that, the way you talk about that, because it's as if I'm going to a therapist and saying, look, I am creating trauma for myself right now by way of this process. I don't want to talk about like my childhood. I don't want to talk about anything else if it doesn't relate to getting through this trauma and being different on the other side.
That's why you should be going during your divorce. On the other side, Pete, I'm with you. Figure out why you got into this mess.
Yeah, do that.
But in the meantime, in a therapist, I think should be like, oh, if I can help this person through this, they're going to really be able to work through their other traumas in life. If there are some, or just how did they get here and what did they do and how to move forward. But literally go to them and say, I'm looking for you to teach me how to better handle this very difficult situation.
Yeah. Okay.
100%.
All right. We're on our last point here, and it seems to be, for me, this one feels the most sort of ceremonially weighty. We're talking about relocation, moving out.
Moving out and actually filing for divorce sometimes go hand in hand. So we're going to talk about both of those. But moving out is where a lot of stress occurs because, one, you're going to have belongings that you want to take with you. Some are going to be your personal belongings that everyone agrees are your personal belongings. Some people are going to argue about, like, no, that's ours. No, that's mine. No, that was a gift for me. Okay. They're just objects. They're just objects. So, but moving out, I'm going to move out without kids first, then talk about moving out if you have kids. Moving out, once again, transparency is key. Where if you're in anything unsafe, get out. We'll figure it out later. But if you're going to move out, it's important to go get a place. This goes back to the finances, status quo, but now we've got another expense that wasn't in the status quo. So this is the type of thing that you do want to talk to your lawyer about before you just up and move, about how are we going to handle it. I am a big believer that before we do anything, we send over an agreement, a joint stipulation that this is how this item or action or event is going to occur. Both parties have their lawyers look at it, they negotiate it, they agree, and then they give it to the court to make it a signed order. Because once it's in the court file and the court signs it, the judge signs it, it's an enforceable order. Don't trust an email from one lawyer to another, because your soon-to-be former spouse might get a different lawyer, and the other lawyer like, yeah, we're not doing that. You want to put this stuff in writing. You want to get in the court file. It's really important. It's a little more formalized. It does cost a little more, but it saves money on the back end.
And what does this thing actually say?
So if you're moving out, we're going to agree that, I'm just making up, the wife has exclusive use and possession of the marital home, and that the husband is going to get a rental apartment or a place for a rent. This is how the bills are going to get paid at both places. The husband shall have access to come get his personal belongings, including the following categories of items. Here's a list of items that shall stay in the house, and neither party shall remove them. But by doing this stuff up front, it takes me no time to draft that one sentence. It takes a lot of time when we're dealing with, you know what? My baseball collection's missing.
Okay.
Wife says, I never touched it.
Husband says, prove it. Can't prove a negative. Yeah, what are you going to do?
Right? And now you're going to the Ring cameras to see if someone's walking out with a baseball collection, but they're walking out with a suitcase. Like, and even if you can prove it in quotes, like, what's a judge going to do? Because, well, what was the value? Judge can say, okay, you lost your baseball card. What was the value? What proof do you have what was in that collection?
Yeah. Documentation. You say it's worth $7 million.
That's right. That's right. and it wasn't a Babe Ruth rookie card signed by him in mint condition.
Right.
You know? Also, just when they're not around, you can just take pictures of stuff. Just take pictures. And then it at least helps. It gives you a little thing. And if you're removing something from the house, let's be transparent. I do this all the time. Is there anything in the house that you really want that you're afraid is going to go missing? Yes. Take photos, remove it from the house, go put it in a storage unit, tell them where it is, where the receipt is. We'll give them the pictures. It's transparent because then you're going to go to court and they're going to say they took all this stuff. We're going to say, yes, we did, Judge. We also sent them a letter with the photos, and this is where it is. And the storage unit is right there. And Judge, my client has the key. So
okay,
when you're reasonable and you're being responsive and thinking it through and being brief, informative, friendly, and firm, I took these items. Here's the picture. This is where it's located. Done.
Okay. Can you just briefly walk through what you tell clients in terms of best practices for the actual move event? Do you wait till the former spouse is on a trip and go in and take your stuff, or how do you handle that?
It unfortunately, I know people hate this from lawyers. It depends, and kind of like rolling my eyes because it really is fact specific. One, it's a double-edged sword when you have kids. Part of it is they don't want to see dad moving out or mom moving out.
Right.
The other part is you don't want to come back to an empty house and like, oh, it just got empty. So there's no good answer here. So it's more how you communicate it. If dad is moving out to a place where the kids are going to go and the kids are teenagers or middle schoolers or even grade schoolers, you can make that an exciting time for them. Hey, we got to get your new room set up. We're going to move some stuff. You've already talked to mom before you talk to the kids about what are we going to do when they want to bring everything? And we're going to say, well, you're going to need toys here. Like, you want to communicate and work this stuff out. What stuff is going to go back and forth is usually the really, really important stuff, but has a higher likelihood of getting lost.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I will share with you, as Pete, you know, my son Kai was 2.5 years old when his mom and I split up and we got divorced. He had a blanket, and that blanket went back and forth, shoved in the bottom of his book bag for years. Okay.
Everybody knows where it is.
Everybody knows where it is.
Sounds like a promising story. It's a Pixar candidate.
It is. Everybody knows where it is. And that blanket went back and forth all the time.
What did he call the blanket?
Oh, that's a really good question. The blanket's name was Girlfriend.
That's really good.
So
that's better than I expected. I thought this is it's going to be Binky or something.
Yeah,
Girlfriend is good.
So as you know, Kai has an older half sister who is 6 years older, and so when he had his little blanket when he was born, my former spouse Nancy and Isabel, her daughter, my stepdaughter at the time, Kai's half sister, were coming up with names for the blanket. And they were like saying very sweet names that I would have identified as very girly names for this little boy with this little blue blanket. Like, you know, Lovey or, you know, whatever. And I can't remember all of them.
Girly, not like Megan.
Yeah, not like that.
Stephanie.
No. So I said, I think we should call it Girlfriend, just joking around as I do. And it stuck. You know,
that's a win for the ages. That is a great name.
Because then he has his first girlfriend, and you can be like, it's not your first girlfriend.
At 2.5.
Yeah, right. You know, so
outstanding.
Anyway, but be careful with those possessions going back and forth. So talk to them about it. Okay, now if you're moving out without kids, you know, a lot of people are very concerned about what you're going to take, and that's why you work on that document first. But if you need to have a third party there, if you want to hire an off-duty police officer because you're concerned about violence, then you can do that. You can hire a private investigator to come help you and stand there and kind of be like, play by play, not color commentary. Here's what I saw. But you need very, very specific things on what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and go from there.
I just want to say, you know how loath I am to give you any undeserved credit, but in this case, I have something. I got an email from a listener who said we had to separate our art collection. We have not very many pieces, but things that we bought together, and we used Seth's advice, and it was great. Do you remember what that advice might have been?
Oh, that's so unfair, Pete. That is so unfair. Well, first off, I'm glad for whatever I happened to make up that day worked. No, here's a couple things on ways to do it. There's different ways to do it.
Well, I know how they did it. What you already said and are getting credit. Would you like me to tell you before you
that would
talk
have been
about
good.
other
You
ways?
could have started with that, but go ahead.
I was trying to set you up for a fall, and it worked. So
right, perfect.
I got to give you a compliment and take you down a peg.
It's perfect. That's why people love this show.
Our relationship is perfect. She said, Seth told us, by way of the podcast, flip a coin. Stand there at your first piece and flip a coin. And the person who flips the coin does not call the coin. The other person calls the coin, and whoever wins gets to pick the first item and then just go back and forth. It's like, it's schoolyard games. And It worked like an absolute charm. They didn't talk about value. They didn't talk about relative value of all the assets. They just said, what do you want next? And it worked great.
I am so disappointed in myself. Here's why. You know how your first answer is always the right answer? When you said that, I literally thought to myself, it's the flip the coin.
It's the flip the coin.
Then I thought, I can't say that right now. Which one was it? There's all these different ways, but here's, I'm so disappointed in myself. If only Andy would let us re-record. So
he said it solved what she could only imagine would have been, many hours of fighting and like arguing over these things. And all they had to agree on was one thing. It was the act of flipping the coin that was the most valuable part of that transaction, because then they could just move on.
Right. And it limited conflict. That's great. Well, I'm glad it was helpful for them. That's great. We could talk for hours on things to do, not to do, but there's a couple more that I really need to just hone in on.
Okay.
When you're dealing with kids and money and documents. So this goes under documents. Any document that is already in place, life insurance, beneficiary forms, do not change. Do not change. Because you change the beneficiary form on your IRA to give it to your brother. You're in a divorce. You die. That was a marital asset. Your brother is now going to get sued by your former spouse. The insurance company's like, look, I got to change the beneficiary form. They're going to say it was a fraudulent transfer. You are just setting up problems. Okay. And they're going to come back. This happened after the date of filing. There was a standing order. He wasn't allowed to do that, Judge. This is unjust enrichment to the brother. He got stuff unjustly. Okay. Don't change any forms. If you have children and you are signing them up for school, extracurriculars, anything, you put both parents' names, you put both their addresses, you put them both as contacts, both emails, both phone numbers, both emergency contacts, you first, them second, or you put both names, call whoever you can get a hold of first, we don't care. And then you can put other people to contact. Don't put your boyfriends. Don't put your girlfriends. No. Okay? So these are critical when you are going through this process, because this stuff will haunt you. Also, do not ever take a picture of your soon-to-be ex or your ex-spouse, because
just any picture.
That will also
any picture.
You have no business taking a picture of your former spouse in any situation, or your current spouse. People do this all the time. I'm going to look at what they're doing. I'm going to video it. I'm taking a picture. Okay. because that will come back to haunt you. And here's what I mean. Sometimes people will take pictures because they're so upset with their spouse or ex-spouse. And where are they? They're in the emergency room and their kid is waiting to be seen and the other spouse is there on their phone or sitting with their new girlfriend. And in this time of need for your child, you decide to take a picture to show what a jerk they are.
Yeah.
That does not play well in court.
Nope. Not a good color on you.
Okay. So do not take any photos of them. There's no reason for it. So I'm saying this emphatically and firm and brief and informative. But please, I'll be nice about it. Please don't do this. You're just going to hurt your case.
Excellent. I feel like that's I would not have thought of that, especially because we are so telephonically promiscuous right now. We always have a phone in our hands, and taking a picture is the easiest thing to do at any given time.
Yep. And listen, I know this is a little longer podcast than our normal one, but these are so important. They are so important, and they are 100% all within your control.
Yeah, look at yourself. Look at yourself. Look at yourself. Put your mask on before you put the mask on your attorney. I think that's the rule. I'm sure that's what they say. Yeah. This has been great, Seth. And in terms of the nuts and bolts of your divorce case this season, we are going from Your Actions Matter to next week, Pleadings, what they are, why they're important. I'm excited. I'm actually looking forward to that.
What we're trying to do this season is to say, listen, you're going through a divorce. There's a lot of words. There's a lot of things you can do. But what is this all about? We're dealing a lot historically on the show with relationships and therapists and all sorts of other great content out there. How to deal with addiction and how to better co-parent. But we're getting a lot of questions coming in about, I don't understand these documents. I don't understand why my lawyer is advising me to do X, Y, or Z. Or why aren't we doing A, B, and C? We're trying to answer some of those nuts and bolts questions. Of course, check with your lawyer, check your local jurisdiction. But we just want to get you some really quality information that the good news is you can go back and listen to it. There's not a quiz at the end of these shows, right? It's going to be there for you.
Absolutely right. A little curriculum. This is your divorce curriculum. That's what we're doing this season. We're very excited about it. So
that's right. And the reason there's not a quiz is we did a quiz and Andy failed miserably. And it was so just difficult to grade. It was so disappointing.
It was hard to grade. You're right. Well, he did misspell his name, and that's worth 400 points off the jump.
That's right. So. Y-I-E.
There was a heart over the I, which isn't even in his name. Oh well. This has been great. Thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening. Don't forget, howtosplitatoaster.com. You can submit your questions there, and they will come to us, and we will answer them on a future show. Now is a great time to do that. It's still the very start of the season, and we are collecting questions with great abandon. We're excited to start answering those as well. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We appreciate your time and attention. On behalf of Seth Nelson, America's favorite divorce attorney, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll see you next week for Pleadings right here on How to Split a Toaster, a divorce podcast about saving your relationships.
How to Split a Toaster is part of the True Story FM podcast network, produced by Andy Nelson, music by T. Bless and the Professionals and DB Studios. Seth Nelson is an attorney with NLG Divorce and Family Law with offices in Tampa, Florida. While we may be discussing family law topics, How to Split a Toaster is not intended to, nor is it providing legal advice. Every situation is different. If you have specific questions regarding your situation, please seek your own legal counsel with an attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction. Pete Wright is not an attorney or employee of NLG Divorce and Family Law. Seth Nelson is licensed to practice law in Florida.